make it significantly worse. I think it's like that for every program. Keegan, I will explain to you what we do by short ideas. Just a short answer. So let's get back to this. So here's Masaccio. Masaccio is one of the early Renaissance artists, and the painting is called Expulsion from the Garden. So this is also taking a religious scene. This is from the Jewish Torah. It's also mentioned in the Quran, but also the Christian Bible. These are mostly Christians. So this is Adam and Eve being expelled from the garden. And you notice the faces. I know it still looks a little off, but this is all brand new. And we can see the face of the angel expelling them from the garden. And they make the garden like if you're expelled from a city. And they have real bodies. They are real people. And they were naked in the garden. And so it shows that realism and expression. Here are a few more. Cavacello was one of the great artists of this a little bit later on, about 150 years later. And look at the faces, just 150 years later, how realistic they look. Another story from the Bible. But he has them in or 1500 clothing. Here is Rembrandt. And now Rembrandt's gone to a surgeon's classroom, teaching someone to be a surgeon, cut fast. And they're dissecting a body. See that? Look at the realism of that, the faces. And you can see you can almost feel their interest into it. That is amazing art. And one thing about this, if you ever go to an art museum, what is really startling about this is when you use oil-based paint, it's thick. It builds up on it, and you can see the texture, and that makes it seem more 3D. This one, it's still amazing, but it's not as good as seeing it in person. I always liked art, not that I had any artistic talent, but I didn't realize how amazing it was till you actually see the actual painting. You see flat images like this, like, oh, that's cool. But you see it then it's kind of, wow. So once again, it's flat. Next big thing, perspective. We saw that in the video, so they did a really good job of it. He showed this painting by Botticelli. And this is the same artist, and he put it in the video of that perspective, of all lines running right to here. And why is it important to write here? So you're looking here, and that's eye level. So we have to look up to see the painting. So we're looking up to, well, in this figure, they want you to look up to Christ. This is Christian. And that is the Trinity. So you have no choice but to look here. Now, when they showed it in the video, they had reconditioned it, so this is a little better, but it's now it is. They went through and cleaned every square inch of it. They had smoke and soot over the years, and it's kind of spectacular. Once again, this isn't doing justice. And that's a little bit better, but you can have no choice. You look here, and then it goes up. Here's another one by Giotto. And this is Christ and the Titans, another religious story, but they're dressed kind of split between, he's got them in this kind of flowing robes, what they thought maybe they dress like them, but that's clearly Renaissance era clothing. And all eyes focus there. That's where he wants you to look. And look at the perspective. This is what matters to the painting. Look at the care he took on the building behind. And that's clearly Renaissance era drawn, even here, washing hands. And you notice paintings. Those will soon go away. And part of this perspective would use light and shadow. So it's perspective, we see the shadow behind. Medieval art, there's no shadows. Look at, here's Caravaggio. And look at the faces. And look at the shadow, the wine goblet. Shadow. And look at the care he took on just fruit. Now, later on, artists by the 19th century, when there's cameras, they're not going to do that because photographs can represent that. That's amazing. It's not that he was more talented than other artists 200 years later. They just saw the world differently. And next, classicism. Basically, going back to Greek Greco-Roman. And much of it was secular. So the third part we have to get, we got the third part, secular. I'm sorry, classicism. It was outside the realm of the church. It was not religious. So they would do religious characters, but show them in non-religious settings. Or this, that's Venus. And that's Roman mythology. And so they step away from that. But look at that. That is the classical, that's classical art. That's copying Greek art, but it's showing her as a realistic person. By the way, how do they do that? Couple different ways. This one, this is carved from marble. So you would have to get a block of marble that was perfect, and you would have to chip big amounts away, and then eventually carefully chip this out. And if there's any kind of perfection, you make up one little pound in your hammer, and the whole thing is really hard. So just show this was a precarious thing. Precarious. I can't even wrap my mind around being that talented to do it. It's just the talent. But this is definitely then humanism, human focus. So all Renaissance art is humanism, but I want to put this here. So here is a classic scene from the 1600s, but you can see how we have Roman ruins, Roman columns behind, even though it's supposed to be early 1600s. And you have Renaissance, Roman, people dressed like the Renaissance, yet in the center, it's Jesus. This is from the Gospel, another Christian drawing of the Last Supper. But hard even to see Jesus. Not with a halo, you would never know. Everybody else is just, it looks like a big feast, doesn't it? So it's taking this religious story, but it's turning it into, here's a bunch of people out feasting, which is nothing at all like what's in the Gospel. Next, emphasis on individualism. So we have the fourth thing, on people. So remember that we have 1, 2, 3, 4. On the individual. You have to write this down, these two parts. This is an artist by Francisco, but this is the Duke and Duchess of Urbana. So an Italian city-state. So just look at the individual. They are the focus, the centerpiece of it. They had this art. He had this artist draw this so they could show them. They could show them in all their grandeur. Very humanist. They're not as just part of it drawing around whatever religious scene they want. No, it's about the Duke of Urbana. And look at him. And look at behind him. Look at the detail of that. But that shows their estate, their land. See the castle right there? And it also shows he had shipping. He had interest in there. And see the lake and the water and the boats? It shows the land that he controls. It's him and his world. Also, one more thing. He must have had heck of a nose. Because the artist is clearly trying to show him as a person, but at the same time wants to make him look better. So he probably toned down that nose. If he got broke a couple times, who knows? But pretty cool, isn't it? Once again, now we can get an idea of what they look like. And they're together but separate. So they're individuals, yet looking at each other. So here's Caravaggio again, David and Goliath, another story from the Old Testament. And so it is a religious story, but what's really happening here? The model of the young man. You can really see that's a person. So yeah, it's David. Story from the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, or it's in the Torah. It's also mentioned in the Quran. Here is the giant Goliath that he slayed. And really, that's just a person. And you can see him. Pretty cool. I like this. Next, here we go. Geometrical arrangement. And this very much fits in with this idea of mathematical formula. And so, what you need to write down is they try to do proportions. 3 to 2 to 1. 3, 2, 1. So what's in the center? Outside would be 2 times as big, then 3 times as big. Everything proportional. It's pleasing to our eyes. So there is Da Vinci. That's called the Dreyfus Madonna. And you'll notice a couple of things about it. But if you look right here, it's hard to see. You've got a pomegranate right here. You can see the seeds of the pomegranate. You know, pomegranate. And is that a homunculus? Kind of, but not completely, right? You know, he's okay. People were so expecting that, but he's kind of drawing him as a person now. And so we have this. Oh, look at the halos now. The expected halo, but you can barely see. And one more thing, look at the countryside. Do you remember from the video we saw? Do you remember that? What did they have painters do so they could do perspective? Do you remember what they did? What did they lay over their painting and then they would paint them? A grid. Can't you almost see the grid? They measure here compared to that. So you have everything proportion, exactly how big things would have been. So here's the proportion. 3 to 2. I'm going to put a triangle there to 1. It's pleasing to our eyes. Was it so? So let's get some of the early Renaissance artists. Some of the artists. And this is an altar painting. So this is behind an altar. So some of the greatest medieval art are actually altars that were painted and they kind of fold out. So you can see where the fold are. They can fold right here, inches out. Then they could close it up. And this would be on the altar. And so Giotto's first. Write down Giotto. And he's probably, a lot of people consider him the first one, so he triggered this. This is his mourning of Christ. So this is another related story, the death of Jesus. So this is from the New Testament of the Christian Bible. But people, they're still learning. They're still learning. But look at the obvious halos. And the angels are all what people would have thought small. People normal. No one is like, Jesus is not massive because he's the most important to Christianity and everyone's smaller. There's another Giotto. The Adoration of the Magi, I showed this once before, but you can see even the camels. He didn't really know what a camel looked like, so he guessed. So a camel kind of looks like a horse there. You know, close enough, right?
Why is that one really small?
I know, doesn't it? It almost, I think he's, I don't know. Part of it is you can see where this was done on plaster. You see some of the plaster went off, so it makes it look even more creepy. Remember I mentioned this, if you were here first semester, frescoes, they would put plaster and then paint over the plaster and now give it a more 3D look. So, Monticello. And this is perspective. Humans are real. But one of the big things he did is he made it a constant source of light. So we had one source of light and painted it as such so where, if you look carefully, you see the shadows? So you get the image of there is a sun there. So he planned it like there is outside and those are the shadows. So Giotto was amazing, but it was still like, okay, he just kind of put more realistic figures, but they didn't have the shadows, didn't have the light, the perspective. And once again, halos. So that's the money tribute. This is throwing the money changers out of the temple, a story from the New Testament of the Christian Bible. So look at the detail, even the trees, mountains, the people, the faces. Renaissance clothing, guesswork of what they might have dressed in at around 30 AD, 30 CE. Okay, Donatello. Donatello was the sculpture version of Monticello. He would sculpt realistic figures, and they're loosely based upon Greco or Roman and Greek and a little bit Egyptian art. So this is David. And these are the first freestanding. So look at this picture right here. Compare this. That is kind of Egyptian, some of the sculpture before. Now look at this David. Look at the body, see the face, you can see the muscle tone. By the way, this was considered a more classic look. I thought would they be lean. A little bit later on, they started getting bigger. That became like we'll make them unusually big. Like all of a sudden they're on steroids. But, and then kind of a counter pose. So not, it's so more natural. And I, contrapose. That's my bad Italian. So how do you do this is brass, this is bronze. So this is copper and tin. How do they make that?
Melt it into shape?
Huh?
Did they melt it into shape?
That would be so hard to do. They make a mold. So they would have to sculpt it. And then and around it, they would make a mold around the original sculptor, make the mold, pull the mold away, and then pour molten bronze into it. And so any imperfection would be, you really wouldn't know inside the mold if something happened until they poured the bronze. And any kind of problem with the heat of the bronze, then it would break apart. So once again, incredibly intelligent, incredibly talented, just different. And that is his, the Penitent Madeleine, another story from the New Testament. And this is from the New Testament, speak, speak, or the plague will take you. And they draw her as real, but at the same time, sad, overwhelmed with grief. Okay, Botticelli. The next one, Botticelli. I don't know why I put 3. I think I forgot, I added Donatello over here. This is his most famous, The Birth of Venus. Have you all of you seen this one before? This is pretty famous. Have you ever seen The Birth of Genius? It's Venus. It's in Florence. It's about the size of this wall. But the point is, this is pure classical. This is fully pagan, meaning not Christian. So Venus, born in Roman mythology. And a couple things about it. There she is, perfectly, classic art, and whether it's a real person. And you'll notice here, that's in Renaissance era clothing. That's Zeus blowing on her, making her real. And you might have heard, when I first saw this, it was the person who showed this to me called this Venus on a half shell. But it's The Birth of Venus. So, a couple more then of this next group of artists. Once you have the beginnings from Botticelli, then we have a whole group of artists that were from basically this Italian artist, this group of them. So let's get the last few for today, and we'll finish it up Monday. You have Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Titian. So these are the 4. I normally have 2 or 3 of these on the test. So we have Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Titian. We will get to Michelangelo. That's Monday. I'll do the Sistine Chapel. What artist is this? Which one of those 4? We've seen this already.
Da Vinci?
Yeah. He had a style, didn't he? He had a style. That's Da Vinci. And we could see, you really can see the proportions here. Here. Then on across. Three, 2, 1. So there's Mona Lisa. That's the perspective. And see it? Perfect. Perfect proportion. It's pleasing to our eyes. We don't know who that is. A lot of people believe it might have been Da Vinci. He took his style he drew for portraits of women and put his face in it. But who knows? And that's Michelangelo. Michelangelo started as a sculptor. This is the last one we'll do today. This is David. And David would be carved from marble. And that's all he wanted to do is this. And this is the classic human form. This is supposed to be the perfect form for Renaissance, like the perfect beauty. But you remember that David I showed you earlier? Look how much more muscular. He's bigger. They start going like a little bit more defined. That became copying a classical style. And a couple more things about it. How big's that head? The head is massive. So first off, compare Egyptian to Michelangelo. That was like a real person standing there, real people. And we have the classical form, even the veins and tendons on the hand. That is Michelangelo. They have a copy of it outside in Florence. They used to have the original outside, but weather started getting it. Now it's in a place called the Accademia. You have to go online now. When I went, you had to wait in line. I waited in line for 2 hours to see it. And in Florence, it's a hot place. That was a long day. But one thing about it, do you see it? How big is the head? The head is about twice the size of a the proportional head of someone standing, proportional. And it's bigger, shoulders are bigger, feet are smaller, for one very important reason. Think of proportion. If you're standing there and looking up at this massive statue, and the head was proportional to like our head right here, how big would the head look if you're looking up? It looked tiny. So he made the head bigger, so it looked proportional from standing below it. That gives you an idea how obsessed they were with proportion. They wanted to make sure that you saw this. This is outside. This is from Michelangelo's drawings, and you can see him how he was obsessed with it. In fact, he would sit in and even probably dissect cadavers to see how muscle formation. And look at that. And that's at the Sistine Chapel. That's the Sistine Chapel, and that's what we'll start with on Monday, a little more art. Sound good? When's the map due? The map is due Monday. Everyone have a map? Everyone have it? All right, map is due Monday. Got it done? Right, I need it Monday. I'll write it down. You need a map? Anybody else need a map? I think you're it. Yeah. You need one? Okay. Yeah, so Monday, if you're gone yesterday, you have to come by Tuesday, just remind me, so it won't be. And same deal as always, see what countries you know, then go from there. To be honest with you, I get run down not seeing the sun. That's why I don't think I could ever live in like Seattle.
Rainy all the time.
Yeah. Till like July. Yeah, about 3 months of sun. Then we'll just, no matter the temperature, we're all out in the sun. And then it's just, I mean,